60 Minutes with Angela starts right now.
February 2019, Nigerians will head to the polls to either elect a new president or return the incumbent Muhammadu Buhari for a constitutionally guaranteed second term. In furtherance of that, on Monday, 15th January 2018, my host today declared his intention to be the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He says he'll be seeking his political party's presidential ticket for what he called the most significant job on earth. Well, hello and welcome to this special series of interviews with the men and women who want to be Nigeria's next president. My host today holds a bachelor's degree in economics, a bachelor's degree in law, a master's degree in information science, and retired in September 2015 from the United Kingdom's Department for International Development. He has participated in the design, implementation, coordination, delivery, and evaluation of projects and programs in Nigeria financed internationally by agencies such as the World Bank, the European Union, the DFID, and indeed the federal government of Nigeria. He is the initiator of Partnership for Development and, on the flip side, a musician and a stage performer. SINA FAGBENRO BYRON joins me on the program today. Thank you very much for coming on 60 Minutes with me. I was reading your declaration. I want to read out to you something you said. You said you'll be seeking your party's ticket for the presidential election of 2019, and if successful, you'll be counting on individual and collective support in order to win what will be a momentous election of our time and significant in our history. Why is it significant?
Well, at this point in time in world history, in Nigeria's history, there has been a lot of occurrences, happenstances, issues, events that has called all of us to question our future, the fact of our very existence. And the globe, the world itself, is facing dire times and a lot of pressure. It's trite to start repeating the poor development indicators that Nigeria has today. Starting from the human development indicators like health, like education, like poverty, like security, and everybody knows where that is coming from. But the fear and why it is significant is that where it is headed to, Nigeria is a significant country. It is significant to Africa. And by a whole stretch of imagination, Africa itself is getting more important to the rest of the world. It's getting more important to the rest of the world because the rest of the world itself is facing its own challenges, its own problems. There are several global issues that has started to build in a sense of nationalism in virtually every country, from the USA to Europe. And why? Why do you have this nationality growing up? It's because of the sense of insecurity. Insecurity breeds nationalism. People want to huddle together to find a destiny for themselves, to redefine themselves, to plot a new path for the future. Nigeria cannot be left out of this global flow. But within Africa, Africa too has its own challenges. You know where Africa is coming from. From the depths of slavery to colonialism, to neo-colonialism, to some form of neo-imperialism. and we are trying to stabilize and find our feet now. But there is increased consciousness, increased subconsciousness. All this was demonstrated in places like the Arab Spring. And you saw people rise up because of challenges, because of pain. The world is becoming such that it's either we face certain extremes or we can balance the challenges to make ourselves resilient, because some of these things are going to happen inevitably. You have climate change, you have global warming. Those in itself create the environment for human reactions, either by moving, migration, and you will find out that the center of movement from the Sahara Desert, right, is either mostly towards Europe, but there's also come a flow of humanity coming down south to meet the coasts along West Africa. There is also radicalization all over the world right now. Radicalization that actually happens even within the sphere of religion or within the sphere of ethnic affiliation. So you have a problem that the world is getting more diverse, but at the same time getting closer. And if you cannot manage diversity when you're getting more enmeshed, then you're creating a time bomb. Now, the second thing you need to manage is mass. Right now, the world is 6 billion plus, and it's going to grow stronger. Nigeria's own population today is about 180 million. And they say that by 2030, we'll be heading over 200 million. If you cannot manage mass and you cannot manage diversity, then we're tending towards,
and you say that President Muhammadu Buhari cannot manage diversity and cannot manage the masses. His scope and his search for solutions is rather narrow. How is that?
Yes, I think it is beyond Buhari alone. I think in the first place, the kind of structural arrangement he sits upon may not even allow it, right? And then himself probably does not come from the knowledge space, or may not have the skill set to be able to manage the kind of emerging diversity, and it's no discredit to him or anything.
Is it about his age?
It's not age specifically, it's situation and what he's done. I mean, it's about skills, attitude, and knowledge have nothing to do with age. You're skilled, you're skilled. Age can enhance knowledge, but at times it may frustrate attitude, it may frustrate your skills. I mean, there are certain things that you can't be as skilled anymore beyond a certain age, either because it's just physically impossible. Attitude too, because of age, you may be set in certain ways that it may be difficult for your attitude to change if conditions turn around. It's not specifically a question of age, it's a matter of capacity.
You mentioned also that his search for solutions is narrow. You talked in your declaration about the availability of people with capacity to Nigeria all over the world, and you don't think he's tapping enough.
That is true.
Into that.
You see, the point is this: whoever is president of the country, he doesn't have to be the Mr. Know-all. As a matter of fact, he's usually far from the Mr. Know-all. But he has the ability to know who are those who know and put them together to work in a coherent manner and under a coherent framework, purpose and strategy to be able to deliver on the goods.
You don't think this team has a coherent approach?
Well, I'm not even sure it's a team. We have to interrogate the meaning of team. The way and manner APC was put together, some will say it's like a special purpose vehicle to get Jonathan out of office. So it's ACN that comes from a heavily progressive, not only in ideology, but also in delivering government services. And we've seen what they did in Lagos State. They come from that. And then you come from CPC, who don't really have evidence in the delivery of good governance. But it's a party that was specifically known for an ideological bent in the north of the country, which was aggregatedly seen to be reactionary than progressive. So when you see these two views, then you wonder that will it work? So if that can't work ab initio, then you do not expect that the subcomponents or whatever comes out of it will work. So this is why I say that this particular government, it lacks coordination and it lacks team spirit. And probably because the raison d'etre of all the components that make it up is conflicted,
Let's talk about your party. I want to focus on that. Your party is COA. Is it an acronym for something? What does COA mean?
As a matter of fact, COA was formed in 2010. I was invited to people who are already thinking of the party, I got there to meet a name already chosen. It wasn't yet formed there because I also am a founding member. And I think, one of the drivers of the party then, Fola Adiola, the former chairman of GTB, Chinua Asuzu, is a lawyer.
GTB meaning Guaranteed Trust Bank.
Yes. And, a number of others. There's Mrs. Shonaya there. Anyway, Kowa party was drawn from Nigerian languages. For example, it has meaning in Yoruba, which means Kowa, let it come.
Yeah.
In Hausa, it means Kowa, as in Kowa, the Kowa, all of us. And in Igbo, Kowa means explain to us. And there are other Nigerian languages
that use the same.
Have something similar to Kowa. All of them have one thing in common. It talks about inclusiveness. So whoever gave it that name was listening to the Holy Spirit.
Yeah,
because this is precisely what we want. We want an inclusive society, a party and a country that works for all, managing diversity.
Yeah. Your party, Kowa, in 2015 presidential elections was represented by Comfort Oluremi Shonaya with her running mate Seidu Boboy. The party scored 0.05% of total votes cast, or 13,076 votes. What gives you the confidence that the party will do better in 2019?
Well, between 2019 and 2015, Nigeria has run a long distance. And I think between 2019 and 2015, I dare say there's a number of people who are new voters now, that they were not 18 years old in 2015. So if you were 17 years old in 2015, you would be 21 right now, and with them a whole raft of others. And I believe many of them are trying to get PVCs, and I believe that they will. That in itself gives me some confidence. There won't be any .00 nothing this time around. We'll be right in there where the figures are, where the numbers are, and for these several reasons. The second thing is that in 2015, I believe that despite the fact that the records show that our party and our candidates, we didn't do too well according to the figures. But I think she ran one of the most credible races. Apart from the fact that she was the first serious female presidential candidate in this country. Professor Shonaya ran not like a female candidate, she ran like a presidential candidate. And people don't forget how you make them feel. It's not much of what you say, but how you make them feel. And I think that Mrs. Shonaya did that egg breaking for the party, just as those before her gave us a first entry. So it's a question of from stage to stage. Now, there are 4 aspirants in Kowa party between you and I. I believe Mrs. Shona will be recontested. But thankfully in Kowa, it's all in an atmosphere of what is best for all of us. And we're all in it for the long, powerful push. And I say that if I were to get the candidacy, not only would we throw everything we have into it, we will get the figures. And we'll not only get the figures, we'll get the love of the people, and we'll create the kind of situation that people will just have to choose between what is right and what is just not there. I believe Nigerians know what they want.
One of the challenges that I see with a party such as yours, and comments from Nigerians is, when we're talking about the lesser known parties, people tend to think that those who contest for the presidential seat from those sorts of parties, all they're looking for is to be able to put former presidential candidates after their name. What are you going to do to ensure that you're not classed in that category?
You see, the point is this. For me, if you want me to be very honest, I think in the first place, part of the mechanisms to exclude people from the fray is to provide scenarios like that you just want to be former, that you don't really want to run. Who says and why not? And what if? The whole idea is that we should fill the space with enough challenge to throw up the best, you see, and it's not to recede or to come back. Now, what is a lesser known party and what is one that is more? Yeah, it's good to have the publicity, it's good to be known, it's good to be out there. But where are we coming from? And known for what? What are these other parties known for? So everybody is known or not known, it is what you're known for. And they've gotten 16 years, 17 years, God knows how many every years, to set a reputation for themselves. It is up to Nigerians to decide that they need to demonstrate to politicians, because politicians really don't. Politicians, as a practice that is of itself without development, never takes the people serious until the people show that they can hire and fire them. And that's how democracies are made. People come up to make choices. Now, I don't believe in narrowing the space. You want to create an inclusive government. You want to create an inclusive society. Therefore, you must ensure that competition is allowed. And that's why I'm grateful to the opportunity I have today to be able to speak to the public, and because also the media provide the opportunity of creating that inclusive society. After all, many of the people who are in this space today, many of them are media made.
So join us again after the break.
Nice question.
Angela, that's a great question.
It's a good question.
It is difficult to respond to that question.
That is a serious question. Angela, that is a very great question. Great question, Angela.
Angela, that's a very difficult question.
That's a great question, Angela.
That's a great question.
Angela, that's a tough one for me.
That's a good question.
I love to ask questions. I think it's what I do best. You see, I think that the fastest way to learn anything is to ask questions. The right questions that help you get to the heart of the matter.
60 Minutes with Angela. Getting answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
Just joined us, it's 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajetumobi, with our first aspirant in Nigeria's 2019 presidential elections, SINA FAGBENRO BYRON. You've had expressed that you had no interest in starting small, as in going to the Senate first or even trying to be governor of your state. One of the problems faced by people who've never been in public office is the dashing of expectations. That's what I like to call it. You retired from the DFID in September 2015. That is a very structured organization. Definitely not how our political space is structured. Are you prepped for that rude awakening that awaits you? You know, how the civil service will frustrate you into humility?
Well, you see, fortunately for me, and probably something that you didn't pick up, about me, is the fact that I ran for local government chairmanship in Lagos State in Tilsa 17 years ago.
Wow.
Yes, I was the PDP candidate for Iru, local government, the first time. But during in the sims of that, what happened was that the PDP, which was my party then, they objected to Tinubu created 34 extra local governments, and we were all asked to withdraw from the elections, even after we had paid our nomination fees. Imagine the party collected money from us, paid money, and also all of a sudden asked us to withdraw because Obasanjo, who was the party leader then, asked us to withdraw. So I've had my 101 of this politics, 101 of this game.
Yes.
When it comes to the civil service and managing the civil service, something I've discovered, apart from the fact that in my training, in my development, personal development, I've gone to several workshops with civil servants in the past, economic policy conferences, courses, in my early days as a lawyer and as a consultant. So we've engaged, I've engaged with civil servants, and I know that just like society itself, where a few people give the entire population a bad name, there are so many wonderful people who are competent, dedicated in the same Nigerian civil service that people do not know. My second line of engagement with the civil service in Nigeria was, I used to be a service delivery improvement governance consultant before DFID, and I had the opportunity to be a consultant in the Federal Capital Territory to work with El Rufai when he was sort of building his e-governance structure. I chatted with, engaged with, and did capacity building for a whole raft of civil servants. In DFID, I was running a lot of governance programming, including public service reform. I was the national co-coordinator of Servicom, because DFID was funding Servicom, and so the coordinator for Servicom was the President's Special Advisor, Adobe, and I was the co-coordinator on the side of the British who were funding the program. And it was training civil servants, it was engaging with civil servants. And I repeated, there are several competent civil servants that can work. Having said that, you do have what I call an organized crime,
Organized syndicate.
Yes. Okay, let me put it this way. The corruption in Nigeria that has seeped into the civil service, that seems to appear to make that civil service not work, is not unconnected with organized crime. It is more organized, and it goes beyond just the civil service. There's a history why the civil service is what it appears to be today. It never was like that. The Nigerian civil service, the regional civil services, at the particular point in time, were the best. As a matter of fact, you could leave Nigerian civil service and head for the UN in the days of Adebo, in the days of Jerobo Doji, in the days of Lawson, there were a whole raft of them. You know, and they grew the Nigerian civil service. At some point in time, there was civil service decay. And how was that? When militaries got in, right?
Yes.
Military operates in a manner that erodes elements of accountability because they themselves, they are not accountable to anyone. And again, another thing that military promotes is impunity. And impunity begets corruption. No matter how benevolent a leader is, if he rules with impunity, impunity meaning that he cannot be questioned,
yes,
he lays a precedence in the machinery of government that some other person who may not be as benevolent as himself will take stock of that and practice in like manner. And that goes and is cascaded down into the civil service, and this is what we've had. So the military era also created some kind of job uncertainty in the civil service. It eroded the confidence and the certainty of service in the civil service, so that people were prepared to take more risk because they had seen civil servants retire
without anything,
yes, and suffer. They had seen civil servants retire on a pension, and the foreign exchange killed whatever value of that pension was,
yes,
including people like my mother. But thank God that we have the kind of social system we have in Nigeria, where relations and, you know, and we are really our brother's keeper. I hope this, and I wish this spirit of being our brother's keeper can be translated into our government, into our public relations and stuff like that.
You speak of a candidate that is, quote, capable, visionary enough to be the next president of this country, with the capacity to unify Nigerians, yes, and depart from the divide and rule strategy, yes, of past leaders, yes, inherited from our colonial occupiers of, yes, power. You say the solution is self-evident, yes, in not only what to do, but in how to do it.
Yes.
Explain.
Thank you very much. You see, divide and rule is a colonial inheritance, and it means that you should pitch one against the other in order to create avenues of control for each. And I have said it before that Nigeria needs to step up in the way it manages its diversity and manages its mass. The fact that we are diverse simply means that we should appreciate that there are differences. We should recognize our plurality. So one thing, to get a nation working as a nation, despite its plurality, its diversity, ethnic, religious, there has to be some point whereby everybody has to see themselves as one. And there must be something that they must commit to, both in terms of their resources, in terms of their prayers, in terms of their attitudes, in terms of their work. There must be something. And that thing is usually defined as the national interest. And your national interest must be defined in a way that is free of ethnic bias, free of political bias.
Inclusive.
Free of religious bias, very inclusive. And for me, I have come up with one, which is basically to protect and preserve Nigerian lands, Nigerian lives, Nigerian livelihoods as well. Protect the welfare of the citizen, wherever he may be, as well as our friends within Nigeria. Now, this anyone can commit because it's citizens focused and it is Nigeria specific. Once you have that Nigerian citizenship, you can claim that you have the right to be preserved and be protected in terms of your lands, in terms of your life, and in terms of your livelihoods. So this is a common thing that we all have to share. If we don't share something specific, you know. The other thing is by the personal behavior and the personal attitude of the president himself. Justice must not only be done, it must be seen, manifestly seen to be done. If you want equity, you must behave in equity. If you want justice, you must behave with justice. You get my point?
Yes.
So it's a question of redefining who your neighbor is and who your brother is. And this is why when people ask me, who's your godfather and who's not your godfather, I say, I don't need godfather. We need more God brothers and God sisters. That is exactly what we do need.
Yes.
You know, and if each of us can make ourselves each other's godfather and God brothers and God sisters,
yes,
and that's the African way. You know, but it's not just the software. It's not just making ourselves disposable, but having a defined thing, a standard that each of us can see that if I am to be a Nigerian, and my life and my livelihoods and my land must be protected, I must be doing the same for the next man too.
Yeah.
So the point is that it's leadership. One of the things that President Buhari is criticized for, and rightfully so, is the choice of a security council, a security team. How do you choose in a diverse country a security council that has people from just one ethnic group?
Yes, but as I always
Yes.
ask, we're talking of the security of a man. talking about your security, don't you reserve the right to work with those you trust?
That is why Nigerians have failed. We have failed in the sense that we define national security as the personal security of the president. That is erroneous and that is wrong. National security is not the security of the president, it's the security of the country, of which the president is just number one. That is all. So it is when you run a country with a national security architecture, and the national security architecture, the first thing it must be able to do is to receive information, because security is predicated on the reception of accurate information and the decision making based on your analysis of that information.
Yeah.
When you have a security architecture that is structured in the way it is, with people from one section of the country, how do they get information from other sections of the country, especially when they are a minority? It doesn't make sense. And this is why we are saying that the federal character that is in the Constitution, it is, for me, it is a beautiful thing. But unfortunately, it can be abused and it can be misused. It has been abused and it has been misused. But it can be used perfectly well in a way that it will work for Nigeria.
You identified challenges in your declaration, and I want to just go through some of them with you. You say Nigeria is endowed with resources, but has failed to reach potentials. In 1960, poverty level was 15%. Today, it's about 71% and up to 88% in a state like Jigawa in the north. You say Nigeria also accounts for 47% of children out of school globally. In terms of terrorism, militant extremism, Nigeria places 144th out of 177 countries on the failed state index. You also talk about desert encroachment with a prediction of a 10-kilometer increase going southwards in about 5 years. These are just some of the challenges that you've identified. What is the plan?
Thank you very much. I made a statement, which is on video, which is on YouTube, which sets out the plan, basically. Because apart from having a national interest, which brings, number one, you have to use the people. It's the Nigerian people that will solve this problem. The first thing about the plan is that you're not going to go out. We're not going to go out looking for people. We're not going to go out looking for foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment will find us and come and invest. You see, because if your country doesn't have the environment for foreign direct investment to come, you don't see Americans advertising to go and invest in the US or going to invest in Switzerland.
We go there willingly.
We go there willingly because we know, and that is the kind of thing we should create. So first of all, it's the people, it's the Nigerians, it's within, it's endogenous. I'm not saying we wouldn't learn, and I'm not saying we don't have development partners, which we will. And I'm not saying we're not going to have trade partners, which we will. I'm not going to say we're not going to collaborate in terms of technicality, which we will. But the focus of our investments and our concentration will be in Nigeria. Now, in practical terms, there are certain things which we have to look at, broadly speaking. We have to look at security, we have to look at infrastructure, and we have to look at human development. Now, we're going to throw jobs outside. Operationally or specifically, we need to rebuild the security architecture. That's the first thing we need to do. We need to rebuild Nigeria's security architecture. Secondly, we can reclaim the Lake Chad. We can build a water pipeline from Calabar to reclaim the Lake Chad. The drying of the Lake Chad is directly proportional to the conflicts and the poverty in the north. We can stop the gully erosion in the southeast of Nigeria.
How?
Yes, we can do that by a lot of intervention. Geographic intervention and a collaboration. It has to be a collaboration with states. When there is an erosion, that means water is flowing from somewhere and it's not having free flow. So you will have to look at it from a micro global perspective. You'll be surprised that the southeast is not eroding. Whatever is causing from the southeast to erode may from another state.
Yes.
It is possible. So we have to look at it in that way, but we will concentratedly look at it beyond just giving handouts of ecological fund to build minor bridges which don't make any sense. Fourth thing we can do is to make sure that we clean up the Niger Delta. Once and for all, stick to it and clean it up. Another thing we will do, but it's not a question of doing, it's a question of making sure, is that we'll make sure that every Nigerian citizen is subject or is protected this time by the rule of law. And that is going to link our security architecture to to how it serves the people. Another thing we'll need to do is to build the green belt. The green belt that has been in the Nigerian plans for over 25, 30 years in the northern borders. So a combination of all this, all these programs themselves are creating millions and millions of jobs for Nigerians. Because you can't build a pipeline from Calabar to Lake Chad
without people.
You cannot build, they're all labor intensive. Everything one way is proposing is labor intensive. So this does, all these programs will just do is that they will just put money in people's hands. So what the government needs to do now is to make sure that that money sort of stays and remains and continues to circulate. So we're going to work with empowering women too, because as far as we're concerned, we believe empower women, empower the nation. We believe, as a matter of fact, we have a saying, no woman, no nation. The second thing we need to do is to get microfinancing to lead financing. Nigeria is overbanked, but it's underfinanced. A lot of the micro banks are in the cities, not in the villages.
Where they should be.
Where they should be. And then we should create things within our localities and ruralities that help money to revolve within the same space, instead of that money going out. So whatever people need to spend to be happy and comfortable should be within their local government. That way money will rotate within the space. You know, it's the whole raft of things. It's working together, but the point is that we have the kind of people who have the talents, the skills, the right attitudes that can deliver on this from every single part of this country. And we will use federal character, and we will use it successfully, and we will use it meritoriously. Another thing that will happen anyways, that we'll have to restructure the social, economic, and political institutions.
I'll stop you there. We'll take our second break. When we come back, we start from the point of restructuring, because that was your #1 promise in your declaration. So join us again after the break.
Nice question.
Angela, that's a great question.
It's a good question.
It is difficult to respond to that question.
That is a serious question. Angela, that is a very great question. Great question, Angela.
You know, Angela, that's a very difficult question.
That's a great question, Angela.
Okay, that's a great question.
Angela, that's a tough one for me.
That's a good question.
I love to ask questions. I think it's what I do best. You see, I think that the fastest way to learn anything is to ask questions. The right questions that help you get to the heart of the matter.
60 Minutes with Angela. Getting answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
My concluding moments now with SINA FAGBENRO BYRON, who's aspiring to be President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 2019. Your #1 promise was to restructure. Is that because restructuring is the new buzzword here in Nigeria, with caucuses in the Southeast and South-South all saying that they won't vote for any candidate who is not promoting or accepting restructuring? What is your view of this restructuring?
Well, in the first place, restructuring is not new. Since the days when Alao Akabashawu was the president of the Nigerian Bar Association, and a group of Nigerians called for a sovereign national conference. The whole purpose was to restructure Nigeria in a manner that it will work for all of us. Now, because even at that time it was seen that at any point in time, whoever was in leadership in Nigeria had challenges in balancing and managing this diversity without letting things get skewed. And in any case, during the military period, the military took over a government and a country that was a federal government, truly a federal government. And the military, in its wisdom, in its impatience, in its desire to deliver on whatever it wanted to deliver, recalibrated this country in its own way, according to itself, which is what? Command and control over centralized governance. Now, the constitution we inherit now, the 1999 constitution, is essentially a constitution that did not come out autochtonously. It didn't come out, from the people, from the flesh and blood of the people. It came out from the writing notes and documents and handover documents of a military leader. They call ourselves federal. But the fiscal management of this country and the political management of this country is run like a unitary government. That's why governors have to go every month, or the states have to go every month, are begging for allocation. everybody's talking allocation, you know, and no state owns anything, and they cannot even develop. Even land now is becoming, they are even questioning the ownership of the land. If that is why we have the Benue issue. So the fact that you call yourself something doesn't mean that is what you are. If you call yourself, you know, one name and you are dressed or you look like something else, then you have a problem, a crisis of identity. So what we call ourselves, and which is our software, it is our software because that's the only way we can work. Nigeria can only work as a federation because we are diverse and because we are big. So we call ourselves a federation. Our founding fathers called us a federation. We accepted that we are a federation. Even the military knew that we cannot be but a federation, and we continue to remain a federation. But the way we are calibrated, the way we are structured,
the practice
which is the hardware, even beyond just the practice, the exclusive list and concurrent list in the constitution itself is hardware. It is not how things are practiced. It is how things are dictated that they should practice. That in itself does not speak of true federalism. It is an over-centralization or an over-emphasis. And, you know, responsibilities, resources, powers of state are vested in the federal government.
Who will drive this restructuring? We've got elected members in the National Assembly. They won't change a winning formula. No one is willing to change something they're benefiting from.
Yes, good. I think you corrected it. It's not a winning formula. It's actually a losing formula, but it's a benefiting formula. You see, when society loses, a few will benefit. Restructuring has become a relay race. During Jonathan's time, they had a conference. Even when Obasanjo was in power for the first time, there was a political conference which came up with a new constitution, which was a restructure of Nigeria. And it came out with something. However, it had the tiny pill of cyanide in it, which was the removal of the term of the presidency.
And that was what killed
And that was what killed that effort of restructuring. Now, Jonathan comes along too, and he creates the Constitutional Conference. Again, came up with its own documentation, 2014. And the current government, APC, while campaigning against Jonathan, it was campaigning that it will restructure. So restructuring cannot be new. Those who say restructuring is new might be guilty of being dishonest.
Can it be the sole answer?
Absolutely not. It is not the sole answer. It is like every other thing, it is a vehicle. It is a vehicle to get us to a point. But it's such a significant vehicle. It's like saying you want to pass exam without going to classes. Or you want to pass exam without, you want to graduate without taking exams. There are certain places you have to be structured and prepared. To go. It's like you want to drive a car and you want to put water in it instead of fuel. So what we're saying now is that you have to create an environment whereby the people of this country can bring out the best in themselves. They cannot do that if they don't own anything. They cannot do that if there's too much exclusion of themselves over the resources they stand on. The federal government also is not fleet-footed simply because it's overburdened. So it cannot concentrate on the things it should be. Its first duty is security. It can't see what's happening in the security sector. It can't concentrate on security. It's supposed to be an enabler of the environment, you know.
Would you agree then with the recommendations of the El-Rufai committee?
You see, that's why I said restructuring has become a relay race. So from Obasanjo to Jonathan's. At Jonathan, you have the El-Rufai committee by the APC. And quite frankly, what has to the product of that committee is very good, absolutely good. It's great. That is exactly what we've been waiting for. I would have just wished that all these documents now, you know, whoever is going to implement it, hopefully it will be me, would just put them together and start the implementation. Now, there are two ways to restructure, or two options, and they don't have to be mutually exclusive. There's a constitutional way and there's an executive way of restructuring. When you run the government itself in a more decentralized government, for example, without necessarily any constitutional amendment, that will enable states to group together, right, for specific development purposes that is within the realm of their region. And I would gladly delegate federal powers to them to be able to execute certain programs, including allocating resources from, that is even before you start changing the constitution.
Yes.
And all the federal civil servants who ordinarily would be waiting for federal allocation should go to their regions and do that development with them. So it would be like a federal-state collaboration on development, but based on regional.
Are we seeing a bit of that in the way kind of the FIME is handling the Mines and Steel Development Ministry, for instance, you know, taking most of those things away from the federal government? There's been a standstill in that area, and possibly allowing the states to develop what they have, because every state has mineral resources.
That is the right way to go. And frankly, I mean, I didn't expect less from Kayode Fayemi, knowing where he's coming from.
Yes.
You know, yes. Take for example, I mean, why do you have so much disorganized? What do you call it? This artisanal mining, miners, and you know, it's not organized. Health and environmental issues are not taken care of. You know, and it's because of it's a neglect. Because where management and control is so distant from where the resources are, you know.
You've talked also, your proposal for a 24-hour economy.
Yes.
You specifically mentioned power, allowing states to generate on their own.
Yes.
You also say we should spend less time looking for foreign direct investment, concentrate more on local investment. What makes an economy to succeed is the number of times money circulates within a particular community. Now, aren't we seeing an increase in generation?
Yes.
We inherited 3,000, less than 4,000 megawatts. Now we're generating 7,000.
Yes.
We've improved on transmission. Losses along transmission lines are almost eradicated.
Yes.
Surely we've done better.
Well, I'm not saying we haven't done better, but if you keep on moving at 100 megawatts, or how many megawatts a year, well, you know, maybe in 50 years, you'll be able to have at least 18 hours of electricity a day.
Yes.
You see, we are talking about step change. You need a step change, you know.
Would you reverse the reforms if you see that the reforms are hampering
No. You see, the thing with reforms is that if you want to, you can either accelerate a reform, right? The reform is the objective that guides the reforms.
Okay.
You want to increase megawatts and you have reforms that are going in this direction to increase it to a particular level.
Yes.
So what if I introduce something else that will increase it to another level, but does not contradict these ones? And it does not have to suffer, except there are people benefiting from it who shouldn't be benefiting. That is the only reason, and that is only when people will complain that it is suffering. It will not suffer. If it is a reform, and it is not, we are not spending more for the reform than for the returns that the reform is bringing, then there is no problem. But it does not mean that we cannot create another program or project or initiative that will again consider. Take for example, I don't know why, and I'm not an expert in energy.
Yes.
But you know, some of my friends tell me, who are experts in energy, tell me that it's only the federal government that can generate into a certain level. And I say, why should that be? As far as I'm concerned, regions should be able to generate huge amounts of electricity if they can have the arrangement.
I think states are generating now. We've seen Lagos State generating and providing electricity for some of its industrial areas. So, you know, part of the reforms that this administration has brought in is to emphasize on that and allow the states to do that.
Well, it's a question of enablement. It's a question of enablement, and this is why the issue of restructuring is even getting more important. Because it will give regions, you know, look, you ask me to go into the boxing ring and you tie one hand behind my back. You know, you say states should generate, but number one, states don't have the money. And if they're going to go to the private sector, you know, they go through mechanisms that are entirely federal. If they're going to borrow money from abroad, they have to go through mechanisms that are entirely federal. Anything that they have to raise money to do that is things that, so look, for crying out loud, it's not exactly, you know, states can allow that they do it.
And I can't let you go without talking about the herdsmen crisis. What is your solution? What do you propose to bring an end to something that has been with us way before this Buhari administration? It's not new, the herdsmen crisis, but you would be tempted into thinking that because the president is a Fulani man, The herdsman crisis just started with his administration.
Yes, that would be wrong, because the problem's been with us. We've had conflicts, we've had issues, we've had how people have related to the Fulanis, particularly because of their, nomadic lifestyle.
Yes.
Right, their nomadic lifestyle. There are also issues that are not unconnected with religion. I mean, the truth must be told. But for me, I think the basic issue there is our land use laws. At the heart of this problem is land use. The land use laws we inherited, the land use laws we've imposed on ourselves.
Yes.
Because it's not past that. There is the law of, under normal circumstances, there must be there is law of trespass. The Nigerian Constitution recognizes that people can own property, including movable and immovable.
Yes.
And if I can own property, then I can own land. And if I can own land, I must be defended from trespass to my land. And the Constitution also says that state governments own or hold lands in trust for the people of the state. So, it is inconceivable that the federal government should be seen to be promoting trespass to land. That's one, because that in itself is a violation of the law. And I think, again, the land tenure system that the North has been used to might have a bit allowed grazing fields and grazing rights and rights of passage, because part of land law has to do with accord tenancies. Giving me rights to water, giving me right to
access.
So nobody can say because he owns the land along the River Niger, then he's going to block the River Niger from the River Niger. That cannot happen.
Yes.
So you have to look at the Land Use Act. But it's also the failure of our agri policy, because part of the entire agri policy must include livestock, and it must include farming. Now, where you have the conflict between livestock and farming, there is an issue. Another problem is this, our interpretation of what the ECOWAS rules say. The ECOWAS rules say freedom of movement of human beings. I'm not sure the ECOWAS rules says freedom of movement of cows and animals. Again, we're not looking at the environmental impact of this seamless movement. When one animal comes into a space, it displaces other animals who have natural rights and natural habitats. So it is not only the rights of the people there, but the right of the ecology to be maintained for the good and sustainable development of the people. So these things should be thought through, and there is also the suspicion of conscious land grabbing and territorialism, because there is evidence that in some spaces when there is conflict and crisis between herdsmen and villagers, and the villagers don't have to be farmers, then they resettle in those places and start raising flags.
When you say raising flags, colonizing the space.
Colonizing the space. And that is why the unfortunate language that will be used in terms of farm colonies is a bitter pill in the mouth for any Nigerian. So the DSS too has also said that there are foreigners who are amongst them, which means we have foreign invasion. And does the Nigerian army sit down and watch foreign invaders? Our borders are porous, too porous, and that's why I say we need a national security architecture. The immigration department is, needs a bit of concern and attention. The customs too. And if you say there are international grazing or international routes, whether be it for cattle or for human beings, which international routes don't have customs and immigration on it?
Policing those routes.
Policing those routes. Should there be routes that should not be policed? And then the question is that how come the caliber of arms and ammunition that these people who are perpetrating these murders are exposed to, how come they have those arms and ammunitions? So it's a whole raft of things that we need to interrogate. And they have to do with, and that's why the security, and that's why we have to go back to the security issue. I mean, it will appear that everybody on Nigerian Security Council is a member of Bayati Allah. That's true, So if you take a deep look at that, you have to, the Ministry of Agriculture, but the buck stops at the president's table, really. The buck stops at the president's table. And Nigeria cannot be seen to take care of everybody else but itself. We're not taking care of ourselves right now. And that's why we need to change. Real change this time, though.
Real change. I wish you all the best in your quest to be president.
Thank you very much.
Perhaps our next conversation will be with you as president?
Well, I hope not. I hope we'll have a number of other conversations before then.
Before
Although
then.
I believe that one should be probably a nice climax to a good engagement and relationship with your effort. So thank you very much for having me again.
Thank you very much for coming on the program. And thank you for watching. I'm Angela Ajitomobi.